have another table over here, one at the side. Okay, I am taking my mask off because I wanted to get prepared actually for Ms. Jones. She is going to be talking to you for quite a while. And when we were doing the presentation for sophomores and juniors just about a week and a half ago, we had our masks on, we had people right in front of us, and that's why we kept our masks on. But the decision was made that in order for Ms. Jones really to be able to talk and not get so parched throughout, if we left these desks open, we would be fine without our masks. So we appreciate some of the feedback that we received from our juniors and our sophomores, because they also said that our voices seemed a bit muffled with our masks on. But of course, safety first, and we would appreciate that all of you do keep your masks on throughout the presentation. If at any time you do need to go to the restroom, please kindly do so. You'll go out the doors. We would ask you stay to the right. Gentlemen, you'll continue to the right. Ladies, you'll make your way around to the left to find the restroom just past the water fountain. Welcome, seniors. Yay. Whether you're here in the Knowledge Room or maybe you're at home watching remotely, we welcome you to Senior Information Night. And I would like to ask, first off, if everyone would grab, those of you seated here in any of our rooms, if you would grab a pen or a pencil, and on that small piece of colored paper, whether it be kind of salmon color or blue or yellow if you're in one of the other rooms, I need you to print the name of everyone who is with you this evening. So student as well as any parents or guardians, friends, whoever might be at that table. Because one of those normal things now is that we have to chart where everybody sits. And so I have my little system and I'll be able to see where people have been. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and do that. And for a moment I'm going to talk to our students who are watching remotely and ask that they please type into the comments. So with the live streaming, what you need to do is just go to the comments and you will type in student name and any parents or guardians who might be joining with you. And also, those of you viewing from home, if you have not yet, now Mr. McCurry, you're going to have to help me with this because I just got a mind block. If you have not yet subscribed, I need you to subscribe because Mr. McCurry really wants to have his own Clark YouTube channel and not have to necessarily call it just Mr. McCurry's YouTube channel. So that's what we're going for. We want to make sure we have as many subscribers as possible. So those of you at home, please make sure to fill in the comments and then to go ahead and subscribe. Seniors could probably tell others about this, but I just need to bring to everybody's attention that we still have our alert system. It was actually started soon before a lot of you became sophomores here and has continued. So anytime that the grades are below, or 73% or below, Mr. McCrory actually generates a file for us so that we're able to take a look and see just who those students are every 2 weeks or so for high school classes and every 4.5 weeks for the college classes. So as of Friday, just this past Friday, interims were posted. So students, parents, if you haven't had a chance to check out Focus, even dual enrollment classes that are taught by our Clark teachers, those grades were brought over to Focus. And of course, students, hopefully if you have only dual enrollment classes, and especially if those dual enrollment classes are non-Clark classes, absolutely share with your parents periodically how you're doing by showing them Blackboard. Otherwise, parents, hopefully you recognize that Focus is where you'll find the grades for high school. That's ongoing. And every 4.5 weeks, you'll see that for their college classes that are Clark-only classes. So just a reminder about the action plan system. And another reminder for everybody, and you're welcome to take pictures of any of these slides as we go through. This one should look very familiar, just with one little addition since orientation. Our website, periodically, there are going to be those hidden items. So with the login of parent and cranes, or student and cranes, being plural with the password, you can find some of those different items that we want to be sure just Clark people have access to. What you see in yellow is new. If you are on campus, near campus, want to come to campus, lunches are free from now until winter break. So, all you have to do is go on to the website, and you'll see a place right at the right-hand side of our website that will take you to the secret place. So you'd have to fill in the code, and then you fill out the form, and you just say, yeah, I want lunch. And we ask you to submit that before every Monday morning at 8 o'clock. This is new since orientation. Martin County School District had a special grant that is allowing the free lunches from now until December 18th. So keep that in mind if you do want to take advantage of that, because it's a wonderful opportunity to get some nourishment, especially since our cafe over at IRSC is still closed. So with those few little reminders, I want to turn the stage over now to Miss Jones. And Miss Jones is actually, I'm going to remind that about halfway through we're going to take a stretch break. Okay, I'm going to flag her down, or any of you flag me down if you need a stretch break, especially for those of you seated here, because all this amazing information that she has, I want you to be able to take it in and process it, and I don't want your bums to become numb, so we're going to have stretch breaks once in a while. Those of you at home, obviously you can stretch anytime you want, but please be tuning in so you have all this wonderful information. So with that, Miss Jones, please.
Yay. It's good we don't have the masks on. We had the masks on last week, and we found that the people at home couldn't hear us very well. So, as Ms. Koch said, there's a lot of stuff I'm going to be going over tonight. Keep in mind I will send the PowerPoint out, and there will be a link to this recorded presentation. It's so weird not talking to anybody right here. But yeah, there'll be a lot of information that I'll go over tonight, but I'll also send out the PowerPoint and everything within the next couple of days. So hello. One thing I'm going to harp on, like I harp on every time I'm up here, is for you guys to make sure you check on your IRC and Clark email daily, or one or the other, whichever. For me, I send emails to both for everybody, and typically I include your parents too. You guys have been getting my scholarship bulletins. Within the next day or two, I'll be sending out the standard scholarship information, which is just for Martin County scholarships. I send out the college visits, the virtual visits, so just keep that in mind, because if you don't check your email, there's a lot of stuff you may miss. And then I'll actually go over the guidance website, which I updated yesterday and today, but included in there is the graduation requirements, test prep, lots of scholarships and financial aid information, but I'll go over that a little bit later. Okay, so what I tried to put together was like a timeline of what you needed to do during the course of senior year to make it not so overwhelming, thinking that you have to do everything all at once. I'm sure you guys are starting to feel the pressure as people are completing their applications. Some of you are in a panic because some people started in July, some haven't even thought about it yet. But I just kind of broke it down a little bit just to make it a little bit easier. We're essentially at the end of the whole August-September thing. But the biggest thing, register for SAT or ACT if you haven't already. I know a lot of you were registered last spring, but then everything got canceled. The majority of you are pretty much trying to stay in state. Florida, unfortunately, is only one of 3 states who have not waived the SAT or ACT requirement for their state schools. So for any of the public universities in Florida, you still have to have SAT or ACT scores in order to apply. They are not test optional. Private schools are different, out-of-state schools are different, but Florida, you still need to have them. And keep in mind that I can help with waivers if you're on free reduced lunch. which is not the free lunch that Ms. Coates was just talking about. Free and reduced lunch you actually have to apply for. If you qualify for that, you get 2 waivers for the SAT and up to 4 now for ACT. You need to be looking at college applications if you haven't already. When I say make note of all the pieces of information, I know a lot of you are applying through Common App to several colleges at once. But what you're not seeing on Common App and some of the other like Coalition, some of the bigger apps where you can apply to a lot of schools at once, what you're not seeing is necessarily the layout of everything that each of the colleges needs. So you really need to look at the individual websites and go to admissions. Some require essays, some don't. Some want test scores by a certain date, some want transcripts by a certain date. Some may want letters of recommendation, others may not. So you really need to look at the individual websites to see what specifically you need. So if you haven't started doing that yet, please do so. Check with me to make sure you're on track to graduate, and I'll actually go over that on your credit check here in just a moment. And then, again, take every opportunity to get to know colleges. So a lot of you the past 2 years have gone to the college fair that we've had here. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it again this year. So we do have the virtual college information sessions that we sent out that hopefully you can attend. Most of you by now have a pretty good idea of what you're interested in and what you're looking at. But it's good to, you know, if there's a college representative, you can always go to, if you go to a college's website, type in like admissions counselor in the search. Typically, they'll actually give you, you'll break down like where you're at, where you live, what county you're in, if it's a Florida school. And you can break it down all the way down to county, and it'll tell you who your admissions counselor is for this area. And you can always email them directly. Don't be afraid to email them. They're used to it, and they're specifically for this area, so you can always search that way as well. And ask them all the questions you want to. And then narrow down your list. Some of you don't have any in mind, some of you are applying to 20. God, I hope none of you are applying to 20. Some of you may be over on this side of the room, but...
No names, no names.
And then create a checklist and calendar. What I did do, and I'll show on another couple screens, is in your folders there's actually a checklist where you can like compare and contrast, you can write down like what every college is requiring. There's just a bunch of helpful stuff that you can use that's inside the folder. So credit check. Each of you on the left side of your folder, and for those of you at home who have not picked up your folders, they'll be available for pickup at the front desk. So you can come in anytime Monday through Friday between 7:30 and 3. And you should be able to pick up your folder. But for those of you that are here and who already have your folders, there's your credit check. You guys have seen this every year. If there are any errors on it, which hopefully there's not, but if there are, just shoot me an email and be like, hey, I don't think this is right. But you have your GPA, your weighted and your unweighted GPA. Even though we don't necessarily recognize valedictorian, salutatorian, anything like that anymore, I know many of you are still interested in class rank and where you stand, so I kept that on there just for your class. At the very bottom, it just has your FSA requirements, Algebra 1, virtual. If any of you have virtual and it's not highlighted or it doesn't say yes, you're all getting your virtual credit this semester. So, because all of you in one way or the other, whether it be a hybrid class or whatever, you're all taking something virtually right now. But then I have it broken down. If it's highlighted in yellow, you're taking it now. If it's highlighted in green, you still need to take it next semester. So it gives you a general idea. Most of you don't have much of anything left as far as high school requirements go. And you'll be finishing up maybe your AA requirements next semester. But that just gives you an idea of where you stand right now towards high school graduation. SAT and ACT, for those of you who haven't taken it or are maybe wavering, you don't know if you want to take one or the other, maybe you want to take both, that's a personal decision. I don't like to tell anybody to do both or one or the other, because all colleges accept either one. But the timing is essentially the same. The biggest difference is that ACT has more geometry, like 3 times more geometry, and you have less time per question in general, and it has a science section. Whereas ACT, you can't use your calculator through the whole math portion. So it really depends on what your areas of strength and weakness are. The prices go up every year, so you at least can count on at least $2 or $3 going up every year. Most of the schools you're applying to, double check, but most of the schools in Florida and outside of Florida don't require the essay. Check the colleges you're applying for, because if they do, you want to make sure you pay the extra for the essay. But if not, save the $15, $16. And then the registration, it's easy, sat.org or act.org. And like I mentioned before, there are waivers available if you have free reduced lunch. Speaking of the waivers, if you've used a waiver before for SAT, you can actually log into your College Board account, and there should be 4 college application waivers in your account that you can use for when you're doing your college applications as well. In your folders, I have the SAT dates and ACT dates that are coming up, and then other test prep resources. If you want to prepare, you haven't prepared, there's books you can check out here. There's lots of prep you can do online through Khan Academy and through ACT. So just resources if you're looking for some additional help. Most of you are pretty much beyond wanting to take SAT prep or ACT prep next semester, but that is an option if maybe you're considering taking a year off after high school and maybe you want to start prepping next semester. We do have an ACT and SAT prep class that we offer in the spring. So what are colleges looking for? I call it the G scale. They want to see your GPA. You'll notice one thing on here is not necessarily class rank. One of the reasons that we kind of took class rank out of the picture is because all of you essentially are so competitive and so close in GPA that to compare you with 86 other students, you know, you may be 50 out of 87, but you may still have like a 3.6 GPA and like, you know, a 4.9 weighted GPA, which is still really impressive, but that's why we don't necessarily like to look at the class rank, because it doesn't give you a good picture of really where you stand. But schools are looking at grade point average, your test scores, at least in Florida. I'm not sure what the other 2 states are that still require the test scores, but at least in Florida they want your test scores. Course selection, and what this means is they want to see that you're enrolled, that you stuck out the classes. It doesn't necessarily say when it says success in rigorous classes, they just want you to be taking the most rigorous classes that you are capable of taking. Don't, you know, you're kind of at the point where there's not much more you can do, but, you know, obviously if you're in college algebra this semester, don't try to stress yourself because you didn't make it all the way to calculus. Like, you've taken the most difficult classes that you've been able to take, and that you've been capable of taking up to this point. Hopefully, you've been doing that. Auditions, portfolios, interviews. This is really only if you're going to like a performing arts school or fine arts. Interviews, some of the higher level colleges and universities will require interviews. Some of you may have already had some interviews with colleges, but most of the public schools and the schools that generally Clark students are looking at don't require them, but just something to keep in mind. Letters of recommendation, we are starting, I mean, I don't know how, I can't speak for everybody else, but I know that I'm starting to get a lot of requests for them. With letters of recommendation, just make sure to give people enough time. Usually 10 days is a good head start to give somebody a heads up. I mean, ask them first. Don't just assume someone will write you a letter, because you want to find somebody that's the best recommender for you. I've had students say, like, you maybe have not taken classes with a lot of teachers here, but you've taken a lot at the college. Just because you took a class at a college and it was 2 years ago, if you felt like you had a good relationship with that teacher 2 years ago, even if you haven't seen them in 2 years, you can still go ask them. Like, obviously, you're at the college level, you're not going to have the same teacher semester after semester. So if there was, you know, if you took, I don't know, college algebra over at IRSC and there was someone that you just really had a good connection with as an instructor, go ask them, even if it was a year or 2 ago. It doesn't necessarily have to be Clark-based instructors. And keep in mind on Common App, when you list me as a counselor, know that when you list me, it automatically sends me an email and tells me to write you a letter of recommendation. So when you add my name, just make sure to send me your resume behind that. At least for me. And then the essay, most schools are having essays, especially schools that are test optional right now. Essay is one of the biggest things that they're looking at. in addition to the other things, because they can't look at test scores. They want to see that you've been involved, not that you were just a complete academic. Like, they want to see that you were out in clubs or playing sports, or you had a job, or that you have hobbies, that you went to prom and you were doing other things like that, rather than just being solely academic focused. They want to see that you kind of have a life outside of the academic world. Finding what fits. The analogy that I use with this is, you wouldn't necessarily just go out and buy a car or a house sight unseen, because it's a big expense. You want to check it out first. The same thing with college. College is a big expense. So check out the schools. Right now, a lot of you I know couldn't do your college visits because everything kind of shut down. There are lots of virtual visit websites. A lot of the colleges have really updated like their virtual visits. So you could do like, the virtual walking tours. A few schools will still let you come on like an appointment basis if you want to. But really check out the colleges, what they're offering. So, and just some things you want to ask yourself, what are your academic interests? Are you interested in biology, history, robotics, technology, languages? And are those interests, can you utilize those interests, and can you utilize those majors at that specific college? And I know that sounds kind of like a silly question, but as an example, I had a student who wanted to go to Flagler and was really interested, but they wanted to do engineering. Flagler's a liberal arts school, they don't offer engineering. So no matter how badly you want to go, you're not going to get that degree there. So just make sure your academic interests are at the college that you want to go to. What kind of student are you? Like, where and how do you like to study? Do you like the bigger, more rowdy environment? Like, do you like a smaller school? Like, a lot of you come to Clark because you like the smaller environment, so you want to go to a school that's is obviously not as small, but on a smaller scale. How do you learn best? Do you want a school where you can have hands-on experiences and opportunities for internships and study abroad, things like that? Or is that not really a big deal to you? What activities outside of the classroom? Do you want a place that has, intramural sports and collegiate sports and Greek life and clubs and things like that? Prestige, do you want to go to a school that has a name to it, that everybody knows the second you say that's where you want to go or that's where you're going, everybody knows what you're talking about? Or do you prefer a school that, as long as they have a solid curriculum and they can give you the degree that you want, that's good enough for you? As far as diversity and social and cultural environment, those kind of go together. Do you want to be with other students that are from a variety of different backgrounds? Do you want more, everybody be more like you? And then where do you want to live for the next 4 years? Do you want to be in a big city? Do you want to be in a small town? Me personally, I could never live in a big city like Miami because that's just not my personality. I don't like cities. I don't like, or like New York. I like to be able to see a horizon and not buildings. But some people love the hustle and bustle, so that's something to consider as well. And now after you think about all of that, you can narrow it down to 3,711 choices.
How many of those are in state?
Oh my goodness, do you know how many? We probably have, I'd say, 50 colleges in Florida, or more, because there are so many like small little independent colleges that I probably never even heard of. There are 2 websites, College Board and Princeton Review, where you can go and do college searches and you can actually break it down. Maybe if you're wavering on like a couple schools and you're not really sure, what would be a better fit for you, outside of the financial aspect, you can search, the size of the school, the size of the classes, the majors that they have, where it's located. I mean, you can really kind of narrow it down and it'll give you a list of what fits your search criteria. And then go from there. Maybe right now you have no idea where you want to apply to, but you have a general idea of like your interest in what you're looking for. You can check out these websites and it'll help you kind of narrow it down. So with the balanced college list, it's recommended that you apply to at least 4 schools. That doesn't mean that you have to apply to 4 schools. You can apply to 1, you can apply to 40. Totally up to you and your financial resources and what you would like to do. The typical recommendation is you have one safety school that's pretty much like your guarantee. You know you can get in there, you fall within their range of test scores and GPA, and they have a pretty high acceptance rate among applicants. And then your two good fits were schools you're pretty sure you can get in there. You know, maybe a little selective that year, but you still fit into their criteria, the middle 50%, but maybe their admissions is a little bit lower, or their rate is a little bit lower, and then a reach school where you may get in, you may not get in, but it may be a dream of yours, your test scores, GPA are close, but those reach schools generally have significantly lower acceptance rates. I know even some of the Ivy Leagues and some of the more prestigious colleges, their acceptance rates are like 6%. So just things to consider. You don't necessarily, like I said, have to apply to 4, but that's the general consensus or recommendation. Should you apply to colleges if your test scores are below their published range? Yes, you definitely should. When they give you a published range on their websites, what that is their middle 50% of the kids that they've just accepted. So you may fall 25% below, you may rise 25% above. That doesn't mean that, say their SAT or their ACT range is a 25 to a 30. You may have a 23. That doesn't mean you're out of the running, because they're taking students from all levels. They want to have a variety of students, not just ones that have the exact identical GPA and test score. So definitely apply. It's not a guaranteed no. And then should you apply if you don't think you can afford it? I know it sounds ridiculous, but yes. Especially when it comes to private schools and within, whether it's in Florida or beyond, private schools have a lot more private funding. They're not like state universities, which just get state funding. They don't get a lot of donations. They really have to go after their grants and their money. So you may actually get a better, what they call sticker price at a private school than you do at a public school. Or if you're only looking at public universities, but maybe, price is a little higher at one than the other, you can kind of see what money they're willing to give you once financial aid packages come out. So definitely don't turn down a school just because you think it might be too much. If it's like your dream, when I was applying to colleges, I applied to Florida, I applied to Stetson, I applied to like Vanderbilt, a couple others outside state. I loved Stetson, it's always a Gator through and through, but I loved the Stetson campus. Looking at their tuition now, I think it's like $62,000 a year. If no one, I probably never paid attention to the sticker price of it back then. Your parents will probably pay attention to that. But like Stetson gives up amazing scholarships, upwards sometimes of like $30,000, $40,000, which you may not necessarily find at other schools. So it could have been more affordable for me to go there than it would have been to go to a state school. But in your folders, there's just the comparison worksheets like I mentioned earlier, and a college application checklist. You don't have to use these, but maybe when you're making decisions or trying to figure out what's a better fit for you, you can use these and it'll kind of help you narrow down your decision. I know I was talking to a senior the other day, I think was applying to like 10 or 12 schools, and it's like, I don't know where to pick. This is kind of a good way to see, kind of where your heart leads you, the bigger school, the smaller school. It all comes down to money sometimes, but however much money they're going to give you if you're really tossed up, between 2 or 3 schools. But in the end, you just have to go where the most comfortable fit is and where you can financially afford to go. There's an SUS matrix. This is the state university system. These are all the public universities in the state of Florida. And it's in your folder. It's 4 pages, or it's actually 2 pages back to back. The first page, back to back, is all the state universities. The second page is all the private colleges and universities in Florida. But it gives you a breakdown of when their application deadlines are, their middle range SAT and ACT for summer and fall, whether, one of the big things when you're doing applications this year, a lot of the colleges, at least in Florida, are having you self-report basically spew out your entire transcript into an online format. Many of them are using a website called SSAR, where you have to put in every class you took in for high school credit from 9th through 12th grade. Some of you that took them in 7th and 8th grades. You have to put in your grades, when you took them, whether it's honors, dual enrollment. Please, if that's stressing you out, let me know. I'm pretty good at looking through them and figuring out what you need help with. But on the back of like the second page of that SUS matrix, it'll actually tell you the system that they're using. Most of the Florida schools are using SSAR. A couple schools are using something called Spark, which I haven't seen yet. But I know, like, if you were applying to UF through the Common App, they're not going to tell you on the Common App that you need to fill out the SSAR. And if you don't fill it out and you don't submit that by the deadline, they won't look at your application. That's why I was telling you in the beginning to make sure you go to the actual college websites to see exactly what they need. Because Common App may give you all the demographic stuff that they need, but they might not tell you that you have to fill in, basically regurgitate your transcript for them. But this is just all the dates, deadlines, GPAs, and like I said, middle 50%, so some are admitted below, some are admitted above. I had emailed out, I believe it was the end of last week, if you're able to make, these times are so hard, I try to schedule them when the least number of students are in class. With seniors it's a little easier because your schedules are a little bit more free. But in the email, and I'll probably be sending it out, check the newsletter every week if you still don't have the email. I'm going to have Ms. Judd updating in the newsletter every week which visits are coming the following week. I think I scheduled between 12 and 15, mostly Florida schools, public and private. If you want information about other colleges, let me know and I'll see if I can get in touch with a representative to kind of help you bridge the gap and talk to them. But these are open only to Clark students and parents, so you don't have to worry about logging in and there being hundreds of other people on this. It's just kind of you and the representative. They'll present things, you get the opportunity to ask questions, personalized to you. We did the Embry one, and then we did one for FAE last week, and it went pretty well, and you get pretty individualized attention. So definitely utilize the college visits. And then the ones where it says TBD, I just haven't gotten the links yet. But I'll update. I know some of you will groan at the thought of having to stay at IRC, but realistically, the reason I put this on here is it is one of the most affordable schools in the country. So if IRC offers a bachelor's program, that's something they're interested in, like their business program, elementary education, there's like graphic design. They have several different programs and even different associate and certificate programs if you're not necessarily trying to get a 4-year degree. Maybe you don't want to get a 4-year degree, maybe you want to go into welding or, you know, heating and air conditioning or whatever. They have a lot of great programs and it will save you a lot of money. And the benefit is, if you're dual enrollment and you have at least a 3.0 college GPA and you were to continue to stay at IRSC beyond high school, your first year they basically pay your entire tuition. They give you, I think it's up to $3,000 that covers the entire year. So maybe you're not quite ready to leave, or because of COVID, maybe as a parent you don't want to send your kid off, but they want to keep on taking classes, or if you want to stay and finish your AA degree, whichever. It's always an affordable option. So something to keep in mind. Okay, October. We're finally in October. I will be sending out an email about Bright Futures and about FAFSA, either probably on the 1st. So you may get a lot of emails from me. Don't delete them. I just don't want to put them all in one email because then it gets confusing. So I'll try to space them out. Maybe I'll send you like one a day. October 1st is when you can start filing your FAFSA, which is the federal application for, free application for federal student aid. Some people may not maybe feel that your family makes too much, so you won't get federal aid. The benefit to filling out the FAFSA is that colleges will use the FAFSA to determine maybe if they're going to give you scholarships or grants that aren't necessarily merit-based. So it's always good just to take the time to fill it out, whether you think you make too much or you don't think you're going to get anything. It's always good to fill it out. It's a pretty, for for the most part, simple application unless you own like a lot of things, and then I start to get confused, and we have a financial aid person here at IRC that can help you with that. If you're pretty basic, you have your house, you have your job, I can help you with the FAFSA. Beyond that, any investments, not so good at. Meet with your IRC advisor. I don't know if any of you are willing to raise your hand, but how many of you have met with your advisor? Okay, so like 3 of you. Awesome. You need to meet with your advisor. The reason I say this is because although I kind of guided you along the process of like what you need for your AA, I cannot give you that stamp at the end that says, okay, you have met all of your AA requirements and you are going to get your degree. I can only say that for your high school diploma. Your advisor is the one who gives the go-ahead that you are good to go and you're getting your 2-year degree if that's the track that you're on. So you need to meet with them. Lots of them, don't be scared of them. You may be able to just like email them. Most of them are taking virtual appointments anyway. You may be able just to shoot them an email and be like, hey, where do I stand? And they may just email you back and you never have to talk to them. You're good to go. And I know right now there's a switch. They lost a couple of advisors who have moved out of the area. And I'll go over in just a minute how to find who your advisor is if by chance you don't know who that person is. Follow the deadlines. I know UF is November 1st. I think FSU is December 1st. You can check that little matrix, that'll tell you that as well. But I know a lot of schools are coming up soon. If a school says it has rolling admissions, that just means as they're accepting applications, they're making decisions. What that doesn't say is wait till the very last minute because they're always making decisions. Even if they're rolling admissions, the earlier you apply, the better because the more spots they have. Early decision and early action. If you apply early decision to a school, that's binding. So if you get into that school as an early decision, you have to go to that school. Early action just means you get your decision before everybody else does. So just kind of be careful. Priority deadlines, some schools may have priority deadlines. Like UF and FSU have priority deadlines. So their priority deadlines I think are November 1st and February 1st. And then they have a secondary deadline, which I think is like January or February after they make their initial decisions. But the first deadline is their priority deadline. That's when they're actually admitting the most number of students. That's when you should really have your application in because the most openings are available and the better shot you have at getting in. If you can't afford the application fees, come talk to me. I know some of them get a little pricey. For some of you, we may be able to do a waiver so that you don't have to cover the fee. I know Common App also asks, there's a spot on the Common App that asks if there's any financial struggles or difficulties, and you can check off that box. If there's not, please don't check off the box. But if you do truly need help with the application fees, let me know. Finalize your college essay. If you started writing it, some of you were great, you finished it in July. A lot of schools, or all schools, have already announced what their essay topics are going to be. I've had a couple students ask if the topics are similar among colleges. Do I have to write a completely separate essay? Not necessarily. If you can kind of maybe change things around, a couple sentences around, a couple things around to where it fits both topics for maybe 2 schools, you can use the same essay. But I do recommend that with your college essay, just make sure that you're actually getting it checked by maybe another adult or a couple of adults. Have us look over. I know Dr. Bonds and myself, Ms. Hutchison, Mr. E. If you've had an English professor in the past or somebody that you really trust reading over to make sure everything looks good, have them do that. Because a second set of eyes is always a lot better than just you looking after something you've been rewriting over and over and over again. Request recommendations, like I said, give us at least 10 days to 2 weeks. And then research scholarships. There's not a lot of research you have to do because I send out a lot of stuff, But on the websites that I send you guys that are like the general scholarship search engines, like FastWeb and scholarships.com and Going Merry, that's where you might have to do a little bit of research. Never pay for scholarship information. No scholarship is ever guaranteed. You should never have to pay money to get money. So at least once a year, somebody's always hit up with that scam. Hopefully nobody falls for it, but you should not have to pay money to get money. Same thing with the FAFSA, which I'll talk about in a minute. Whoever's out there that created FAFSA.gov is the official government website, and then there's FAFSA.com, which, I mean, they're kind of brilliant in creating it, I guess. But they'll charge you like $70 to do all of your paperwork for you, and then they'll guarantee that you're going to get money. There's no guarantees. So when you're doing financial aid and scholarships, don't pay to have any of that done. So types of financial aid. Grants, you don't have to repay. Grants are wonderful things, so are scholarships, because you don't have to repay them. Grants are usually offered by the government, and they're based upon financial need. And like I said, they're based on FAFSA results, and when I say your financial aid package, after you're admitted, usually around February, March, April, depending on the school, they'll send you a letter saying, okay, we have your FAFSA, this is how much tuition and books and everything else is, this is how much we're going to give you grants, scholarships, loans. They may not have factored in Bright Futures or any of that yet, but this is what we'll give you based on your financial need to meet whatever the total cost is. Scholarships, again, you don't have to repay them. There's lots of scholarships based on grades, based on need, based on if you want to go into law, gender specific, if you're left-handed, if you have red hair, if you have something special about you, just Google it and scholarship attached to it. I guarantee you'll find something. I know in Palm Beach County, when I worked in Palm Beach County, there was the Tall Club Scholarship. So if you were a female of a certain height, or a male of a certain height, or taller, they gave you scholarships for it. So if you're super short, search like short person scholarship. You'll probably find it. But in general, if you don't meet the criteria, like if you're close, still apply. I think it was the representative from Embry-Riddle yesterday, said that she actually has had a male student get a scholarship that's specifically meant for females because no females applied. So I don't know how that works. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend going and applying for like the gender-specific ones. But hey, it works for a couple people. Loans, of course, nobody wants loans, but sometimes they're a necessity. Unfortunately, when you're being considered for financial aid, they don't take into consideration that you're paying, all of these other bills and doing all these other things. They look at, how much money your parents make, and that's about the only thing. So your income may look high, but you may have lots of extra bills. That's not really factored in. So you may be offered loans, which you have to repay them starting 6 months after graduation. If you're like me and you get that call 6 months after graduation and they tell you after you have a very minimum, I think I started out making like $24,000 in like a public service job, and they called me 6 months after and were like, you have to pay $750 a month. And I started crying on the phone. It's okay, it gets better. I didn't last in that job. I did much better after that. But government loans you do have to start repaying or work out payment plans, but they're not horrible things. Just try to kind of keep them at a minimum if you can. And work study is when you work on campus, and the federal government pays for it. So you get the money directly. It doesn't necessarily go straight towards your tuition, but it's kind of a side job. What's awesome about it is, like when I was in college, I worked like for environmental engineering department, and I worked for industrial engineering, and I worked in different departments on campus, and they kind of work around your schedule. So if you have 2 hours in between classes, it's nice because it's on campus. You go to your job, work like an hour and a half. They're totally understanding. You can come back and bounce around, and they kind of work with your schedule, not like a typical off-campus job, which you would normally have. And they really work with your schedule. And then again, completing the FAFSA is free. Do not go to FAFSA.com and pay the $70 or whatever it is. Go to FAFSA.gov when you fill that out. And that again opens on the 1st, and I'll be sending out information when that opens up. Financial aid nights. Normally we would have them in person or they would be over at the college. This semester everything has gone virtual. What I was able to do, we have Alex Arnold, who's the financial aid advisor over at IRSC. You can still talk to her even if you're not staying at IRSC because she's the one who helps anybody coming in for financial aid. So if you're going out of state, she can still help you with financial aid. If you're going to, FAU, she can still assist. And her information is at the bottom. She'll help you fill out the FAFSA, she'll help you with everything. She's amazing. But specific to Clark students, we do have a virtual online presentation with her where she'll go over how to apply for financial aid and she'll help you or set up an appointment. The first one is next Tuesday, October 6th from 6 to 7. Once I get the link from her, I will email it out to everybody. And then the following week on the 15th, along with the Parents and Partners meeting with Ms. Kohuth, they'll also be discussing financial aid and she'll be presenting that night as well. So if you can't make one, you can always go to the other or you can reach out to her via email. And then I have just handouts in your folders about facts and fiction about college costs and basically what you need to, the information you need to gather when you're applying for financial aid. And I think I'll go over the advising slide and then I'll go to that break that they're making me take. I'm just kidding. So everybody can kind of have a breather and not have to listen to me talk. But IRC advising. I know you don't know who your advisor is. 70% of you don't know who your advisor is. Or it's changed because like I said, there were a couple of advisors that have left and are no longer in the area. Preferably, you should be meeting with your advisor within the next month before registration starts. Because I think spring registration starts October 30th. So keep that in mind. I'll be emailing you about setting up schedules too. But registration will start end of October, so you want to try to get in now before it's really crazy over there and they don't have a lot of time on their hands. To find out who your advisor is, you go to IRSC and you log into your Pioneer portal. Then you select Workday, which I've pointed to. It's the little icon on here. Then you go to Academics. And then the next screen in the middle, it'll actually show you a nice little picture of who your advisor is and their contact information. And you can just send them an email and say, hey, I'd like to meet to see where I am or see what else I need. Maybe you're not getting your AA just yet or you want to change things up and decided, like I said, you maybe want to do welding or something else. It's just a good place to start so you can start talking to them about what's next and what you still need to do. And as I mentioned, it is your responsibility to meet with your advisor to make sure that you have your AA or you've met all your requirements for your degree, if that's your intention, by May or by the end of summer, because they're the ones that check it off and type everything into the computer that says you're good to go and sign you up for graduation and all of that. So, with that, how long would you like me to break?
Just a little stand-up break. If everybody wants to stand up, stretch a little bit, because you've been seated. Gotta get more oxygen to our brain. Okay, hopefully you're a little bit rejuvenated.
And like I said, I know it's a lot. It's just easier when we have everybody all together at once, rather than trying to break it up over multiple nights, kind of frees up your time as well. So a lot of you, I think, generally we graduate, our average is about 60 to 65% of everybody in your class will finish with their 2-year degree. If not within, and there's a good chunk of that who haven't finished by May, that'll finish usually within a semester. So you guys really are so much further ahead. But that also means you kind of have to move on a little bit faster than others, so. So keeping in mind, when you have your dual enrollment classes, and you're moving on to the university level, you have to have in order to qualify for any sort of financial aid, once you get to a university, or if you're staying at IRSC, once you transition to IRSC as a traditional student, what's important about success in your dual enrollment classes is they are counting towards your college transcript right now, wherever you're going. So you have to have a 70% success rate in your classes. So out of all of the classes that you've taken, at least 70% of them you had to have been successful in, which means you had to have gotten an A, B, or a C. I guess you're kind of given a 30% window of like withdrawals or D's or F's, which hopefully you're not getting. But you have to at least have 70% success in all of the classes you've taken in order to keep getting financial aid, and get financial aid in the future. A two-year degree may not necessarily transfer to all colleges and universities. In the state of Florida, like I have on here, public universities will typically accept, like the Florida state schools will typically accept up to 66 credits. And I know many of you actually graduate with more, especially this class. You were a very eager go-to class in the beginning, and you've taken on so much, which is commendable, but you guys are exhausting. Not personally to me, but it just amazes me you guys have taken on a lot. And a two-year degree doesn't necessarily mean that you have 2 years of college left. So you could, I've had students that have finished their next degree at their next university in 1.5 years. I've had others who have stayed for 3 years. Some people tack on, a double major, so it doesn't necessarily mean you only have 2 years left, but it just means that you have your basic general education requirements left. When you're applying to colleges, I get this question all the time. When you're applying to colleges, even if you're going to have your associate's degree, you still need to apply as a freshman. You are a freshman because it is your first time in a university or college setting after high school. And keep in mind that although you are applying as a freshman, and it's excellent if you get in as a freshman because you get the whole freshman experience, not necessarily going in at the junior level and kind of being forced to move a little bit faster. But for those of you who are trying to take, an accelerated path to get out quicker, keep in mind you might be going into some classes at the junior level, so you're expected to maybe know as much as the 22 and 23-year-olds that are in your classes. You may be going in at 17, so you may be going in at a junior level, so just something to keep in mind. And it's encouraged that you have like an intended major when you get on campus because you already do have so many credits. If you don't, that's okay, but it's generally recommended. Most of you have some sort of idea what your interests are at this point. The beauty of having a degree is that you can be considered for freshman admissions, and then you can also be considered for transfer admissions. So I was talking to someone earlier, and I use UF as an example, it's just top of my head. For UF, you're looked at for freshman admissions. If you don't get in as a freshman, you can turn your application over to transfer admissions, and you essentially have a second shot at getting in as a transfer student. This is UF specific. Other schools may have similar processes, but you can turn your application over into transfer admissions. The thing is, if you're trying to go into a school as a transfer, you need to make sure that you have all of the prerequisites done that particular major that you want to go into. You have to make sure those are all done. So you want to go to UF, you want to major in business, you don't get in as a freshman, you want to turn your application over to transfer admissions. As a business major, if you haven't done your stats, your business calc, your micro and macroeconomics, your computer applications for business, there's 7 classes. If you haven't done those prerequisites, you're not going to get accepted as a transfer. Most of you will be getting into whatever school of your choice as freshmen, but if it's a school you're really dying to go to and you kind of want that second shot if you maybe don't get in your top choice, transfer admissions is always something else to consider. Or you can play around with it and go into something, that may not necessarily be your particular area, and switch it over later. Even though it's a lot harder once you're a transfer student to switch majors, because they kind of expect you to be done faster. Colleges will not necessarily kick you out, but they still have graduation rates and numbers that they kind of have to, fulfill for their own funding and everything, so they may want you to, they may have an expectation that they need you out within a certain amount of time. As long as you're paying them, great, but you might look bad on their numbers if you stay 6 years when you're only supposed to have 2 years left. I have just some things in the folder again about college application essays and common questions that kind of gives you an idea of what to focus on, what not to focus on. I know sometimes it's hard when you're doing college application essays when they want you to basically spill out the most important detail of your life, but maybe only in 500 words, or so you kind of have to start cutting out words here and there, or maybe it's a topic that's very dry and not of interest to you, because I know a lot of the essays are not very interesting topics. So maybe you have to kind of pull a little extra out of yourself to make it, come out to a full, good essay. But there's just some tips on there for kind of how to write your essay. And always, everyone here, as far as your teachers and everybody, we've all been to college, so we could probably all give you tips on kind of what works and what doesn't work, so feel free to ask us. In the folder is also a student letter of recommendation request. For me, I typically just ask for your resume. Some of the teachers, though, or some people that are outside of Clark may want some of this information that kind of tells them a little bit more about you. Some of you as students may not know this, but I also emailed your parents and created this lovely sheet for just for Clark people that kind of things that maybe you don't see in yourself, or you wouldn't normally tell your, it's hard to talk about yourself, so you may not say, well, I'm really amazing at this. But we sent it out to parents, so if parents wanted to reply, you can tell us how wonderful your child is. Or things that they may not be willing to tell us or don't even think about. Because if we can put in as much information as we can into these letters to make you, kind of a shining star that they just can't live without you at the college, we want to do that. Bright futures. I was handing out to everybody, and I'll put them in all the folders that are remaining. Bright Futures, again, is the merit-based scholarship program that Florida offers. Kind of the downside this year is they did raise their test scores. Starting with your class, you are the first class that gets the higher test scores, which is awesome in a time when a lot of you are not able to take the SAT or ACT as many times as previous years have been able to. But for the Florida Academic Scholars, they raised the combined SAT score to 1330, or the ACT composite to 29. The Florida Academic Scholars, you can actually use that scholarship at any of the public universities in Florida, and it'll pay 100% of your tuition, and I think it's $300 a semester for books or fees or whatever else you need to use it for. But with that, you also have to have 100 community service hours and a 3.5 GPA, and I'll go over your Bright Futures evaluations in a minute. They recalculate. GPA for Bright Futures is recalculated. It's only based on the classes that are listed on here. Your 4 credits in English, 3 in math, or 4 in math, 3 science, 3 social studies, and 2 language courses. Those are the only classes they look at. They don't look at your psychology class. They don't look at your PE. They don't look at your art. They just look at the core courses and recalculate your GPA based on those core courses. What's kind of beneficial is maybe some of you have taken an excess amount. You've taken more than 4 math credits. But maybe you've taken 6 math classes, but you had 4 A's and 2 B's. The benefit of it is they'll take your 4 A's and won't look at your 2 B's. So if you have excess beyond what they're looking for in each area, if you have 5 science credits, they'll look at your top grades in the 3 credits, and then kind of discard the other ones. So it's a little bit beneficial to you in that sense, if you go above and beyond each individual core requirement. And then Florida Medallion, the SAT is a 1210. And funny enough, the ACT composite actually dropped 1 point to a 25. I don't know what that says about SAT and ACT, but I think it was because SAT was new a couple years ago and they hadn't quite tested it out yet. But the ACT is down to a 25. You have to have 75 service hours, 3.0 GPA, and they recalculate your GPA on the same courses. And that pays up to 75% of your tuition at a public university in Florida. You can also use Bright Futures at private schools in Florida, but it will only give you like the public school value. So if it's worth $3,000 to pay your full tuition, only $3,000 will be applied at a private university. For the Florida Medallion, the good thing about that is if you were to stay at like IRSC or transfer to like Valencia or Tallahassee, I don't know if it's still called community college or not. The Florida Medallion actually pays 100% of tuition at the 2-year like traditional community colleges. Bright Futures is not a guarantee. You just have to maintain certain requirements, which once you're at the college, it's not really that difficult to maintain the requirements. I think for one of them, you have to maintain like a 2.75 GPA. They're not crazy requirements to keep it every year, but you have to keep it in order to renew from semester to semester. If you meet the criteria after this December's grades are in, you're pretty much locked in. If you have the test scores, the GPA, the hours, by the time December hits, they actually can't go back and take the scholarship away from you. Once you've met it, it's yours. However, if you fail or withdraw from anything, you do have to pay the state back. Students apply after October 1st, before graduation. I have an email in my little drafts box ready to go out on Thursday morning, I think that's the 1st. You don't have to wait to apply. Like, if you say, well, I don't have the test scores, so I have to wait to apply for Bright Futures. No, apply for October 1st, and once you start meeting the requirements, we send your transcript, and once you get the test scores and everything else, the state will start checking off those boxes. You can apply now, you don't have to wait. It's a really simple application process. The application for Bright Futures also actually applies you for, I think there's like 10 or 12 other grant opportunities through the state. So it doesn't just apply you for Bright Futures, it gives you a bunch of other opportunities as well. So just try to get that done sooner rather than later. If you're like, there's no way I'm staying in Florida, I'm leaving, it doesn't matter. Things happen, you may come back. I think I have it on here. Yeah, initial funding must occur within 2 years. So say you move to New York because you want to pursue your dreams of being an actor, or I don't know, whatever you want to do. If you come back within 2 years, you can still, and you've already qualified for Bright Futures at the time of graduation, you can use that money within 2 years of coming back to Florida. Say you want to take a gap year because with all the craziness you really don't know, you just want to work and kind of figure yourself out. That's fine. They will hold that money for you and you can use it the following year. And Bright Futures will actually pay for up to 5 years beyond high school graduation, and it'll pay up to 120 semester hours. So because a lot of you already have so many credits done, Bright Futures will actually pay up through, I believe it's your first semester of a master's program if you stay in Florida. So that's kind of nice, because grad school gets a little bit more expensive. You must maintain at least 12 credits per semester in the minimum GPA. And then many of you have, I think there's like 12 of you that don't have your Bright Futures evaluation in your folder on the left-hand side behind your credit check. If you don't have it, I am aware that you don't have it. It is because you are currently taking a class that has a lab with it this semester, like general biology in lab or chemistry in lab. And there was an issue with the way that the state was reading the course codes. We got that issue fixed today, and the transcripts have been resent. So as soon as I'm able to pull them, which is hopefully tomorrow or the next day, I will email the evaluation to those of you who do not have it in your folders right now. So have no fear, they are coming. I have a list in my phone of everybody that still needs to get it. But with the Bright Futures evaluation, I actually just pulled these a couple of days ago. And the district sent in all your transcripts, I think September 1st or 2nd. So when you look at the very top, there's the evaluation date. That'll tell you the last date that you were actually reviewed. And they typically only review 3 times a year. Right at the beginning of the school year, in December or January after grades, and then after graduation. So you can see your evaluation date on there. And then on the right-hand side, it'll tell you your potential award. Some of you have already qualified, and it'll say FAS or FMS or one of the other awards. They'll show you your highest test scores to date. I know that anybody who took anything over the summer, I don't think your test scores have been entered in Focus yet. So you may have the scores, but it may not be reflected on the report. Have no fear, they are still coming. There's just been a little delay in getting everything into the system. On the right will be your service hours. That's how many we have in Focus right now. So if you don't have them submitted, but you've been doing hours for the past 4 years, get them submitted. Because they're pulling what we have from your transcript. And then if you look where I have like the double arrow, if you just look down from Florida Academic, that's where you stand with Florida Academic, and the other column is where you stand with Florida Medallion. Gold Seal they have on here. The Gold Seal is general if you're doing like a vocational program, like if you were doing like one of the medical programs at one of the other high schools or something like that. Most of you will get the Florida Academic or the Florida Medallion. Very rarely do we have someone qualify for Gold Seal because we don't have any of those programs. It'll show you your recalculated GPA, which is always going to be different than the GPA that you see on your grad reports or your grad status. And then right below that, it'll show you what you're missing. So like on this one, the student in question, their test scores are too low, they're missing a half credit in science, and they're missing a half credit in social studies. You know, if you have a half credit in social studies on there, it may mean that you still have to take economics next semester or something like that. So most of you will notice that your GPA is typically higher on Bright Futures than it is on it's typically higher on there than your unweighted GPA is on your grad status. And I can always, like I said, these get evaluated again in January, so if you kind of want an update to see where you stand, just shoot me an email and I can send you a PDF of where you stand, the same report. So as far as community service, I know you don't have a lot of opportunities because a lot of places are shut down right now. There's a good website out there. It's called, I think, Volunteer Match. There's a, hold on, let me click forward. There's a helpful website sheet in your folder, and I also have the link posted on the guidance website under community service. I think, no, okay, this is an old one. But I think it's called Volunteer Match, and they have tons of opportunities that are virtual, that are like across the country, that you can do different things and you can get hours, even though maybe you can't necessarily go outside and participate in certain things because a lot of things are still shut down. But there's a difference now where you used to have the forms that you had to sign and then you turned into Miss Wood and she put them all in the system. The district has now gone to a system where the student has to take responsibility for submitting their hours. You actually have to go into Focus. And there's a spot in Focus where where you have to log in and go to the portal, and I have the directions on here. And you either have to upload either that signed form that you already got filled out, or if there's a letter on letterhead from like the supervisor of the Humane Society that says you completed X amount of hours over from this time period to this time period, that'll work. You just have to submit or attach some sort of proof. And once you submit that, and a lot of you have been doing that, it comes to me, and I just, I check your proof, and then I approve, and it gets automatically added to your transcript. So if you haven't submitted your hours, start doing that now. Check emails for opportunities, and like I said, under community service on the guidance page, I have a lot of local places too where it'll take you directly to like their volunteer websites. So say you want to volunteer with like the Elliott Museum or the House of Refuge, I have that on there. You click on it, it tells you exactly how you become a volunteer. There's a great program at the hospital, like a teen volunteer program for anybody that's interested in medical. Typically they only take students in the spring, but it's something good to start looking at now. the Y, the oceanographic, pretty much anywhere where I could think of. It's on this either helpful websites page or it's just easier to click on the link online. And we're only to November. So November to December. If you have applications that are early decision or early action or priority, get them sent in, get everything submitted. As I mentioned before, have another adult review your application before you submit it. I've had several students that have come into my office and they'll just kind of schedule a time and we sit down for like an hour. We go through the application, just making sure we've checked all the boxes and everything's off. I don't mind doing that. I'm, very familiar with what all the applications look like, so we can always do that if you want. Or you can, well, I've also had students send me their logins and then I just do it if you're like a remote student. We can check things that way, or if you want me to look at something specific, I can do that. And I'm sure Dr. Baum doesn't mind, and I'm sorry, I'm not speaking. She's shaking her head now. She doesn't want any of you to come to her. Just kidding. Every college will want a copy of your transcript. When it comes to your transcript, you need to send your high school transcript, and you want to send your IRSC transcript. Even though all of your IRC grades are on your high school transcript, they have to see it from the college and from us. So you have to send them both. Test scores, I know you think they're automatically on your transcript, but most places will actually want, most colleges will want you to send them individually from either SAT or ACT. If you haven't already listed them for free, I think usually if you list them within so many days after taking a test, or when you first register to take the test, you can send it up to like 4 colleges for free, or I think it's 8 if you have a fee waiver. If they're not already being sent to those colleges, you'll probably have to pay to send them later. And I don't think it's, kind of a ripoff to me, but with College Board and ACT, I think they charge like $12 for every test score. I'm getting some nods. So yeah, it's like $12 for every score or score report you have to get sent. But you have to get those sent because that may be the one thing that there's colleges waiting on because you didn't log into your account and send it. They're not going to make a decision on you. The beauty to a lot of the Florida schools is when they have you enter in your transcript information, they're trusting that you're going to be accurate in what you enter. So make sure that when you enter your grades and things like that, that you are accurate about it. If you got a C, don't put that you got an A, because you're like, they're having me enter this. They will double check it later because they will ask for your official transcript later, and they can deny you admissions later. But just make sure everything gets sent from the appropriate places. If they just want to see your test scores on your transcript and they're good with that for now, that's fine, but just double check what every college is looking for. Regular decision applications and financial aid forms. I was being very generous in saying that these applications would be due in January and February to have them all done by then. I personally recommend trying to have your applications done in like November, December, depending on deadlines. It kind of frees up your second semester a little bit and you're not so stressed out about all of this. But it's just good to have them in. And again, the earlier you apply, the more spots that are open and the more people they can admit. Register for the January SAT. Some schools, like I said, have rolling admissions, so you can still test up through like the January and February test dates. My recommendation is to stop testing probably the latest December. I know I got an email, I don't know if it was from FSU or UF, where they're not meeting your scores until like mid-December, so you can still take the December SAT if you need to. So they are giving you a little bit of leeway there. But again, check the individual sites and when their specific deadlines are. Because most schools don't just have one deadline. Like the bigger schools will have your application deadline, they'll have your transcript deadline, they'll have your test score deadline. But it's good to just have it all done at once so you don't have to worry about it later. And then if we need to send transcripts, if you have applied on Common App, I get reminders about when your transcripts need to go again, and I already send them myself because I have to upload them. But if some of your schools require a mid-year report just to see how you're doing and how you did first semester, It's just a matter of coming and asking me, either to upload to Common App, or Ms. Wood can also send the transcripts for you. Speaking of transcripts, again, you have to send your high school and IRC transcripts, so don't forget. I have all of this under transcripts and guidance, so you know the exact website to go to. I don't know if any of you have ever logged into My IRSC. It was a system that was in place before Workday and Pioneer Portal kicked in, which kind of started, I think, when you guys were first starting here. You may have never logged into it, you may not even know your password, but there's actually some help on there where it tells you like what your first login password is. I think Ms. Judd may also have access to be able to look them up, but I don't swear on that. But that's where you have to log in to request the transcript. And IRSC sends everything electronically, and they don't charge you for your transcript, which is good. Colleges won't let you transfer or start classes until they get your final transcript, so keep that in mind after you graduate. And then for Clark transcripts, most we can send electronically if it's within the state. Ms. Wood, if she has to mail them out to maybe some of the private schools or out-of-state schools, you get your first 3 like paper copy transcripts sent for free, and then it's $3 per transcript. After that, of course, if there's an issue, like a financial issue, that's something that we can discuss, or if you don't feel comfortable saying something to her, you can say something to me and we'll get it figured out. We don't want $3 to hold you up from getting in somewhere. February to May, you can start breathing a little bit. Hopefully, things will get back to a little bit more normalcy and you'll have like at least half of your senior year that's not COVID affected. But you'll start getting your acceptance letters and your financial aid offers, and you'll start getting excited because then you get to decide where you want to go. But you have to review everything, kind of pick your final school. Don't be a slacker in the classroom. If they've accepted you, remember that they can't take it away from you. A couple of years ago, I think we actually did have a student who did horrible their second semester, and their admissions offer was taken back from the college. So they will look at that. So they want you to keep up the rigor in the classroom. They don't want you to take like all the easiest classes you can. But typically most of you are taking 4 college classes, which still looks pretty impressive, even though your schedule may be very bare. But try to at least, throw an English in there, or a math, or a science, like have it a little bit more rigorous. May 1st is the date that you have to tell your college when you're going to go. It's when your deposit is due. May 1st is across the board, regardless of where you go. If you get accepted to multiple schools, it is nice to let the other schools know, either via email or a call, to let them know that you're not coming to their school, because that will free up a spot for somebody else. I don't know how many students actually call the other schools, but it's just nice before May 1st, to be able to let somebody into that space. Request your final transcript. Don't stress this now. Ms. Wood and I will be harassing you about that once we get closer to graduation. And then if you're waitlisted by a college or deferred, don't panic. If you're waitlisted, people are still let in. If you were deferred, people are still let in. But my suggestion, like I have on here, is to actually call the admissions office and maybe find out why they're wavering on your application. Maybe they just want you to take the SAT over again. Maybe they want to see how your spring grades are, the rigor of your college classes or your classes for the spring. Just kind of find out if there's anything you can do to strengthen your application. I know UCF pops up every year where they're always waiting. There's always like 1 or 2 students who applied when everybody else did, like in October, and then in March they still don't have a decision and they don't know why. Typically it's because they want to choose test scores, or they want something. So don't be afraid to call these admissions offices. That's what they're there for, to answer your questions. So please pick up the phone call. General advice: the earlier you apply, the better. And then we already talked about if you don't get accepted as a freshman, some schools you can roll over to transfer admissions. I know UF will do that. FSU, I believe, has, I'm sorry if I'm using those 2 schools, they just come to mind first. FSU actually looks at you as a freshman and as a transfer at the same time. So you'll get that decision all at once. Other schools, you're only considered a transfer if you've taken 12 credits after high school. There's lots of little rules, it just depends on the school. Have your resume prepared for recommendation letters, and you should all have beautiful resumes because Dr. Bonds has helped you with them, and you have to have them for internship anyway. One of the big things I know now is they want you to list what your classes are going to be for the spring. We obviously haven't picked classes because we're not like every other school where your classes go the whole year. If you have a general idea what your classes are going to be, list those. If you know you're going to take a math but you don't know what math, list one. They want it to be as close as possible to what you think you might be taking. If it's not exact, don't panic, that's fine. Things will change. And colleges know that. Usually you can go in and update your application or your SSAR or whatever it is later on down the line. I recommend making one email addresses for all your colleges and all your scholarships, so it just goes to one general place, so you're not searching for it, you're not searching in your personal, your clerk, your IRC. Just have one email, try to keep it professional, or as professional as possible. If there's anyone here that has a disability, maybe you have an IEP or a 504 plan here at high school, remember that once you get to a university, you have to self-identify. They're not going to come after you and be like, hey, I knew you had an IEP and you got accommodations. You want them here? No, you have to go seek them out and apply for them on your own. And then again, acceptance does not guarantee admission. Keep up a strong schedule. Don't turn 18 and do something dumb. Don't lie in your applications and say you had all A's when you didn't. And then, as always, I know people kind of laugh this one off, but just be careful of what you put on social media, because admissions reps are saying that they will look. Not saying they're going to look at everybody's, and I know you all have your spam accounts and all that other stuff, but just kind of be careful of what you put out there into the universe for others to see. And I'm going to be quiet for a couple minutes so Dr. Bonds can come up here.
I was just thinking about how in class last week I told them all that about social media. Now I have backups.
That's true, she did. I heard it.
Thanks, Marissa.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to give you a couple of reminders, a couple of announcements. You guys all know who I am and what I do. Spring interns, those of you who are planning to take my class and complete your internship in the spring, if I have not met with you yet, I need to see you as soon as possible. I've already started putting out some feelers for some different people about internships for the spring. The internship process this semester has been enlightening, is the word I'm going to use. It's been an interesting process, still in process. So I'm starting to kind of put some feelers out because a lot of people are going to not be doing things in the spring either. So we need to talk as soon as possible, if we haven't already, about spring. And anyone who has any ideas or business partners, any contacts or your own businesses, please let me know. I'm always open to ideas. November is Career Development Month. That's going to look a little bit different this year as well. We're probably going to push the ASVAB to the spring. I don't know if any of you are interested in taking that or if you have in the past. That is a skills assessment that has a career exploration program with it. It's a pretty cool program. We're probably going to be doing that in January, February, instead of during Career Development Month like we usually do. But I am hoping to have some guest speakers at school, maybe virtual, but just give you a little bit of career information for Career Development Month. So I'm working on that as well. I always like to point out whenever I get a chance the My Career Shine system, because it's such a powerful system, has so much good career information in it, and anyone in the state at any age level can use it. There's a lot of good career information. There are some assessments you can take in there. Sometimes they have job listings in there, but it's a really great source of information related to careers, so I try to point that out every opportunity I get. There's a little bit about the ASVAB. I'm not going to show that because that's all changed now. All right, so does anyone have any questions for me? Short and sweet? All right, I need to emphasize that if you're planning to do your internship in the spring and you have not met with me yet, I need to see you as soon as possible. Okay, thanks.
One thing I wanted to point out, normally being down here, I'm just used to people coming in like nonstop all the time into my office. I kind of miss that, but the times, I can't do anything about that. And a lot of you have been really great about emailing me, and you're like, can I come in for an appointment? That's the weirdest thing to me, because I'm just used to you coming in. You can still do that if you need to talk to me. My office is still open. I'm up in Rapunzel's suite up there. I'm in my little fishbowl castle up there, up on the second floor. So you can still come in if you're on campus and you want to stop in, see if I'm available. You don't necessarily have to email me first. It's okay. Maybe if you just come in and you want to see me, that's fine. You don't necessarily have to make an appointment. But I just added this slide probably an hour before this started because it was sent to me from the college. So normally they do what's called grade explorations, where you can go to the college and find out about all their different programs and their bachelor's degrees and other things that they offer. But if IRC is maybe where you want to stay for another year or take some classes here and there, they are doing kind of like a virtual exploration day. And this will get sent out in the weekly newsletter too, so you don't necessarily need to copy it. But there'll be people from each of the programs listed on there that will give you information, maybe tours, things like that, where you can learn about different programs. And you can always search the IRSC site as well. And then the guidance website, so if you go to clarkalc.net, and then you click on guidance on the left-hand side, this is where I'm putting everything. I've updated, like I said, I updated yesterday, and I updated a little bit more today, and I'll finish up with some scholarship stuff probably in the next day or two. But there's also the testing resources, things that are in your folder. You can also find them online. Scholarships and financial aid, I have them. The bulletins that I send you, if maybe you deleted the email when I sent you the bulletin, you can't find it. Whenever I email you, I also post the bulletin on the Clark website as well for scholarships. College and career planning, I have lots of different things on there. Again, lots of the stuff that is printed in your folders, also online. And then the links to different volunteer opportunities, and there's a bunch of other stuff that you can find on there as well. So please utilize the website. Like, I put a lot of time into posting everything on there to kind of make it easier for you to be able to find everything. The recommendation request forms are on there, how to get transcripts. Pretty much everything I go over tonight is all on here as well. Kind of at the end, I just kind of want to put on here yearbook and senior portrait information by request of Ms. Gribble and Mr. Escandone. So yearbooks can be purchased. It goes up in price. So October 30th or after October 30th, you go up $5. But you can order your yearbook online. And the very last day to order is January 31st. And then for those of you who have not gotten senior pictures, does she have a date on here? Yes, okay. If you haven't done senior pictures yet, or had them taken for yearbook purposes, you don't have to buy senior pictures. But if you want to get them taken but don't necessarily want to drive all the way down to their Delray Beach studio, on October 22nd, we're going to have it set up down here again. So if you need to get your senior picture taken, you can do it on that day. And I know Ms. Gribble or Mr. E is also going to be sending out information to sign up for that if you need to. There is a $30 sitting fee, but I know if you talk to, Mr. E or Ms. Gribble or one of us, if it's a financial issue that's stopping you from just having a sitting fee, let us know. If you're ordering a senior ad for your student, January 29th is the last day to do that. If you're ordering a business ad or putting a business ad in the yearbook, December 18th is right around the corner. Important senior dates. This is kind of sad to update because there's like so many dates I can't give you because we don't know. But virtual college visits we have all the way through October 26th. Standard scholarship application, which is all of the local scholarships just for Martin County students. The deadline for all of those is December 1st. If you can do the application and submit it to me beforehand, that's wonderful. But 99% of you will turn them into me on December 1st. But I'll send out that information in the next couple days. IRSC Foundation also offers scholarships that are not just for staying at IRSC. You can use them outside of the college. Their deadline's coming up in January, but they haven't even released their application yet. So again, you'll get an email from me. Check your email. Fingers crossed we'll have prom this year. We'll see. I'm actually trying for the LA Museum because I think that would be fun, but that's just me. April 27th is scholarship and awards night. And then IRC graduation, if you're getting your AA, is April 30th, which is a Friday. Hopefully we'll get to do grad bash for you guys sometime in May. Those are the only dates that are available, so we know it'll be in May. And then grad practice, we're actually graduating like a week or two earlier than normal this year. So grad practice May 14th and graduation on May 15th. And hopefully everything will go as planned as we've had it in years past, with the exception of last year. But at least those dates you can give to family when they're wanting to know when graduation is. When it comes to the IRC graduation ceremony, I know this is months away, but just as a heads up, they typically only give you 4 tickets, and there's not many extras to be had. And we're a little different, you get a little bit more. If we have a traditional graduation, usually you have about 10. But all the information about tickets and fees and all that will be mailed out in the spring. Graduation practice is mandatory. If you don't come to practice, you don't walk. And we would love to see everybody at graduation, just because your last year and a half has been so crazy. And then if anybody has any questions, I can answer them now. Before I go to questions though, always feel free to email me or to give me a call. Email's usually the easiest because admittedly, I'm on email way more than I probably should be. But I can't help it. If there's an app for it, it'll be on my phone and I'll go check it. So, does anybody have any questions?
Just about the senior pictures.
Yes.
Do you know if they will do a retake here? Because we went down, but we didn't realize the collar was like completely fly-based.
Do you know if they'll do picture retakes?
I would say, let's go ahead, I'll make a note that we check with them to see if you were to come in on the 22nd, if they go ahead and take care of that.
For those of you in virtual land, we'll check to see if you'll do picture retakes. Anybody else? No? Oh,
My husband mentioned that he remembers, what did you say, something about the Bright Future scholarships also being able to be used in some schools in Georgia and others.
yeah, Bright Futures, some schools in the surrounding states, like some schools in Georgia and some schools in Alabama, mostly in Georgia because they have something that's similar to Bright Futures called the Hope Scholarship. So they sometimes allow a little, reciprocity. They will allow Bright Futures to be used at schools in Georgia. Yep. But you have to check with like each individual school.
So if you're doing early action for whatever schools, and you're planning to take, let's say early action is November 15th, and you're taking the SAT again November 7th, how does that work? Like, you submit the application, and then afterwards you send in, hoping that you improve.
If you're doing early action and testing is like a week before, I would check with the individual school. I mean, usually test scores come back within like a 2-week period, so, but usually if for early action and things like that, they want the application in and then they'll give a little bit of time on leeway for test scores. You just have to check with the individual school to see if they'll accept them after the application deadline.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you signed up to take the SAT last weekend and it got canceled.
Yeah, that's happening a lot.
So what happens then is do you have to pay again to apply again to take it, or?
No, if the SAT was canceled, they'll either ask you to change to a different date, or they'll refund you. You may actually have to go out of county. Some people have had to go like into St. Lucie County to test because they have more testing centers open than we do. We may only have, one of the high schools or 2 of the high schools that are testing. But yeah, you'll have to reschedule. You won't have to pay again because you already paid once, and if they canceled it on you, then no, you don't have to pay a second time.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
If we're going like for a program like nursing or pre-med, do we have to do like a whole other set of applications for that program? How does that work?
Typically, if you're going for something like nursing, there is a separate application, but nursing's a little different because they're like a selective program. So you have to check with each university to see if they have a separate application beyond like your application for admissions. But like for nursing or the selective programs, you may have to be in the school for a certain amount of time before they'll let you get into those programs, even if you have the prereqs, so you just kind of have to check with each school.
Do you apply like after you're accepted to the school, or do you do it while you're sending?
It all depends on each school. Some of them, the applications are due at the same time. For the special programs, some they're not. I know, nursing programs are especially weird, so I'm sorry for those. That's totally another ballgame. Anybody else? Okay, just yell at me.
For Bright Futures, do they super score like our SAT and CT scores?
Yes, Bright Futures does super score. They'll take, for SAT, they'll take your highest reading and highest math, and for ACT, they'll take your highest individual score and combine it for your highest composite. Yep. And most colleges will do the same thing, which is wonderful. Anybody else? If you're raising your hand and I don't see you, just yell at me. You all know me. We're good? All right. Well, if you do have any questions, like I said, shoot me an email, give me a call, let me know. If you see any discrepancies in your credit checks, shoot me an email and I'll fix it. I'm doing 250 of these, so sometimes I hit the wrong key. But other than that, have a good night, and yes, if you need anything, let me know.
Yeah.